All right, and welcome back to Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith. I'm Tyler Smith. It is 4:03 on Friday, March 24th, I believe. And it's been a hectic week, A lot of stuff has been going on. I apologize. Haven't been on here too often on Side 91.5 FM. Been traveling quite a bit. Had the opportunity to go and attend the first four at UD Arena in Dayton, Ohio, then bounced on over to the first and second rounds in Columbus of March Madness. It's been an incredible span of a week and a half here, and it's been pretty crazy. I missed two shows on the Friday on Side before spring break, which was about March 10th, and I missed the March 17th show, March 10th and the 17th show, both being at the first four UD Arena, then in Columbus for all that. So it's been kind of the craziest little bit of weeks here. We got a lot of great basketball content coming your way. So the best way to stay tuned here is subscribing to my YouTube channel. It's Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith. If you just Google that on YouTube, look it up. That's where you're going to be getting the most content, especially if I'm traveling, going to events, things like that. Chase Yount, if you remember from before, he hops on with me on YouTube quite a bit. He's got a great show. And we really team up and do a lot of really good things there. We're going to be doing an NFL draft watch along here in a few weeks when that comes around. We're going to be live the entire NFL draft. We're going to have special guests, maybe an Ian Eagle, something like that. We're going to get some people on there. We're going to have a pretty good show. Hopefully, we're working behind the scenes there. It's going to be kind of a big production in a sense. We're going to be all dressed up doing our thing. So that's the best way to stay tuned. But here on the radio today and on YouTube, eventually, we're going to be talking about the March Madness bracket. Right now, Sweet 16 Day 2, Sweet 16 Day 1 was yesterday. And we're just kind of roll with that show kind of theme today. We're going to stay very heavy in the March Madness talk about what's going on and all those great things. It's been an incredible tournament so far. Not so much if you're an Indiana basketball fan, whether that's a Hoosier fan or a Purdue Boilermaker fan. Unfortunately for you Purdue Boilermaker fans, I actually had the opportunity to watch the Fairleigh Dickinson University Knights upset those Purdue Boilermakers and defeat Zach Edey. And what makes it even a little bit sweeter for me here is I predicted it and called it too. On the show, live from Nationwide Arena, told my boy Chase on the phones while we're talking there, doing our show. I was like, hey, man, something about this Fairleigh Dickinson University Knights team, something about them. There's just this feeling surrounding them. And I had a feeling that Almanor, the kind of the small ball five of FDU, was really going to make something happen, I think. I really had that feeling that he was going to do something and kind of take over in that game. So really felt like he was going to do well there. And he ended up doing just that. He forced Zach Edey to just adjust and deal with him. And I think Tobin Anderson, the head coach of FDU, who's now the head coach at Iona after Rick Pitino left, did some phenomenal things. That was a coaching masterclass. So I know you Purdue Boilermakers fans are really upset about that game, but you guys really hurt yourself, shooting 5 of 26 from the three-point line and then really just not able to adjust. Yes, they were all over Zach Edey, but FDU wasn't doing anything too crazy. They were kind of in control of that game from start to finish. It felt like, Purdue's largest lead was about 5 or 6, but my confidence in FDU never really wavered there for a bit. It's just one of those games where they just did all those things right, as you can ask in a basketball program. And they said, hey, we're going to make these other 4 guys on the Boilermakers, not named Zach Edey, beat us. And Zach Edey still had a pretty solid game, but he was equally frustrated because he was being double teamed all night. They were double teaming him, one in the front, one in behind all game long. He couldn't do anything. Could not do anything about it. It was just, he had to deal with it. So it was hard to catch the ball, hard to find him down low. And some of the Purdue guys turned it over and lost confidence in throwing it into those tight windows. But when Zach Edey did receive the ball in those tight windows, he did pretty well. He scored some buckets. He had a solid stat line coming out of that game. But really, it was team in all of college basketball this year. They're the shortest team, But Ken Palm was one who kind of put that story out there initially, and that's how it's kind of found. Ken Palm is also extremely useful in finding analytics, very well talented and equipped at predicting kind of these wins and these upsets and things like that, and kind of give you a feel of the teams in the tournament, especially because the March Madness tournament is so unknown sometimes. Because you're going to be having a team like the Fairleigh Dickinson University Knights, FDU, who no one's ever heard about. And FDU really should not have even been in this tournament. Merrimack won the NEC, but they were ineligible because they did not. Just because the NCAA is ruling, if you become a new Division I program, you have to wait 4 years before you're eligible to compete in Division I contests. I think that is honestly the dumbest rule ever, personally, because as a college athlete myself, and I've said that multiple times on the show, recruiting is huge if you're going to be bouncing from the D2 to the D1s. And we'll touch more on D2 to D1 here in a few minutes. But if you're going to be going from Division II to Division I or Division III to Division I, it happens. And if you can't recruit to your players and say, hey, in your 4 years here, you're going to play in the March Madness tournament, hopefully, you can't say that because, like, hey, in 4 years, we're still not going to be allowed to play in it no matter how good we are, which is ridiculous because you're shooting that team in the foot and you're kind of limiting them and not allowing them to have a chance to compete and recruit equally. NCAA doesn't see it like that, but everybody else kind of sees it like that. So FDU got the at-large bid or the automatic bid out of the NEC, but in a realistic sense, they got the at-large bid because they finished in second place in that NEC tournament. And then they had to go to the first four. They went to the first four. They defeated a team in Texas Southern, and they really felt in control of that game. FDU ended up winning that one 84-61. That was one where it was just from start to finish all FDU. Texas Southern could not shoot the three ball to save their lives, from what I recall in that one. And then they moved on to face Purdue. And everybody's thinking, oh, man, this is going to be kind of a wishy-washy game. Purdue's going to kill them. No, it was not that at all. It was not that at all. Final score in that one was 63-58, but you just had a bunch of gritty dudes for FDU trying to make things happen. A gritty team in a sense. FDU had three players, Dimitri Roberts, Grant Singleton, and Sean Moore, who all came from St. Thomas Aquinas College, a Division II college that some of you guys may have heard of. And their head coach, Tobin Anderson, came from Division II St. Thomas Aquinas. So in a span of 11 months, Tobin Anderson got hired from St. Thomas Aquinas to FDU. And his trio of guys that he had and brought from FDU were 14-3 in the postseason all time. All time. And they've ended up about 15-4, I think, after this great run in March Madness. So they're a group of guys who knew how to play with each other. They're very familiar with each other. They've coached each other Tobin Anderson's coached those guys for a while, and they've also played for each other for a while. So they know the system, know the expectations. And now we see them kind of go on to seeing FDU beat Purdue. And that's why I felt like they could do it, because it's a team that's experienced, a team that knows what they're doing, and a team that was just hungry. I think that is what you need. And Purdue just has collapsed in the tournament the last few years, losing the upper digit seeds, some double digit seeds that they shouldn't have lost to. And I really felt like the writing was on the wall here for FDU to advance and do their thing. That's really what made me feel confident about this. And then we go on and see FDU beat Purdue, and then some other highlight matchups in this first round. FAU Memphis, that was a great game down to the wire. Duke defeating Oral Roberts and Max Asmus. And then you had Tennessee, Louisiana. Tennessee, a team that not a lot of people were high on entering the tournament, thought that they were going to get bounced first round even. And Tennessee's ended up here making a deep run to what was the Sweet 16 yesterday. And then they got bounced by a team in FAU. And FAU barely skips past Memphis, a Memphis Grizzlies team that I really liked. And I didn't think if FDU didn't get the job done, I figured Memphis would get the job done. FDU gets the job done, but Memphis loses to FAU. A matchup where Providence's star player transfers away from Kentucky, goes to Providence, then tries to take his Providence team and defeat his old team. But Kentucky got the job done there. Kentucky wins. Then Kansas State, Montana State, Kansas State wins. Kansas State, they got a guard. Let me tell you, Kansas State has a guard in Noel who broke the all-time single game assist record. Yeah, all-time single game assist record. He had 19 assists, I think, last night, 19 or 20, and broke the record. And there's a highlight floating around. Don't know if you've seen it, but there's a play. Kansas State walks up Noel, and this is a choreographed play. They know it's coming. He fakes an argument with his head coach on the sideline. He's standing at half court, screaming at his head coach, waving him off like, no, I don't want to run this play. I want to run this. No. You just see them going back and forth for like 10 seconds. And then No Look throws a lob to Keontae Johnson, who originally was at Florida. If you remember a few years back, and want to say 2020, 2021, one of the two, when COVID was going around, basketball and some of the sports came back in March Madness. Keontae Johnson, he's been going by both, collapsed on the side of the court for Florida, before a game. And that's why all these athletes don't get the heart scans with COVID, but he collapsed. And that's a great comeback story. Balled out last night, had, I want to say, about 20-plus points, and then he was the one who caught that lob. So this Kansas State team, there's a certain feeling around them, a certain energy around them, where I think they're going to go to the Final Four. I think they're going to win in the Elite Eight over FAU and go to the Final Four. And they got a shot. I think they're going to be matched up with Alabama, if I recall correctly. So they're going to have a tough task in front of them, but they very well can do it. And then we're looking else in that region there too. Tom Izzo and Michigan State. They go in the first round, 7-10, beat USC. Then they upset Marquette. Marquette was a kind of a sleeper pick by many to be the team who makes the Final Four, a sleeper national champion, even you could argue. And end up beating Marquette 69-60. And then unfortunately last night they lose in what was a thriller of a game to Kansas State. 98-93. Overtime finish, the first overtime game of March Madness this year. And Kansas State was very fortunate, I would say. Tom Izzo's getting a lot of grief right now, a lot of hate for saying that Kansas State's performance last night was a lucky performance, that they were lucky to win, lucky to skate by. I disagree. I disagree partially here. Michigan State choked on the final possession of the game. They had a chance, and they kind of just threw it around and didn't do anything with about 13 seconds left on the game clock. Just kind of choked it away, unfortunately. But Kansas State played just as good as Michigan State, Michigan State did turn the ball over a bit, but Michigan State also shot 93% from the free throw stripe, I think, last night. With more turnovers, they weren't a great free throw shooting. Go off and have some good free throw shooting or limit your turnovers. One of those two has to do. If you can do both, you're set up for great success. But Kansas State moves on past Michigan State, and now we have a Elite Eight matchup here in the Eastern region with FAU and Kansas State. And this is one where I think Kansas State is going to roll FAU. FAU has really had the easiest path to get here, I think. And that's why I think they're going to fall to the feet, of Kansas State. Now we're going to shift to the West region. The West region, your 1 seed out in the West was Kansas. Your 2 seed, UCLA. And last night, we see UConn and Gonzaga make it to the Elite Eight. Kansas ended up losing to the Must Bus in Arkansas out of the West. And that game was a thriller end to end. And you saw Musselman, the coach, stand up on the scorer's table, rip his shirt off at 60, 65 years old and swing it around in the air. He's been a guy who's been around the basketball scene for quite some time and knows what he's doing. And has kind of just been a killer of the top seeds in this tournament. He's went into the last few tournaments, made the Sweet 16 consecutively, and has not had favorable matchups. He's had to go against the ones. He's had to go against the twos. And he gives it to them, and they win. Musselman's a great coach. He's been around coaching for so long, coaching every single level imaginable, every single pro league, every single minor league, semi-pro system. He's been there. He's done it. And he's done a fantastic job. A lot of people think he might be lured away at the end of this season. But if I'm Musselman, I'm staying at Arkansas where I'm beloved by the peoples of Arkansas in that school. You don't want to go away and risk losing something. You have something great going. You have something good going. I would stay there. But last night, Arkansas met their match in UConn. UConn was one of my picks to win the national title this year. Coming into the tournament, I really liked Marquette. I really liked UConn or Gonzaga. And then on the flip side, in the other regions, I really liked Alabama, and I liked Xavier to win it. And Texas and Indiana, some dark horses. So right now, I'm looking kind of good. The only thing that's really blown up in my face has been the Marquette pick. And if I could go back and change my bracket after watching Michigan State in the opening round, I probably would have put Michigan State over Marquette, I think. just because I saw the way Joey Hauser and AJ Hoggard play. And I really liked them after seeing them in person. But coming into this tournament, I felt really strong, really confident in Marquette, a team I spoke very highly about on several different programs, just because of Shaka Smart and the way he was coaching, the way he kind of had this chip on his shoulder, and that chip on his shoulder went into the guys on his team as well. That's why I really liked Marquette in this tournament. But they met their match with Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo, the greatest coach in college basketball, you can argue, Mr. March, Tom Izzo, and he did his thing. And we have UConn and Gonzaga. UConn's a team I really like. UConn's very well-rounded, but they also have two dominant big men. And that showed last night, defeating Arkansas by 23. And UConn put in their backups for almost the entirety of that second half. So that game could have been a whole lot worse. And now we have a matchup here I think that's really exciting. Very well could be the most exciting Elite Eight matchup, I think, in UConn and Gonzaga. You have UConn Gonzaga taking on, and it's UConn, the 4 seed, Gonzaga, the 3 seed. And I really like them to do well in this one and move on. I think UConn will defeat Gonzaga. Gonzaga is the best scoring offense in the country. And then Drew Timme had 15 points in the first 10 minutes, I think. But he was just playing out of his mind electric. And that's going to be what keeps you. This was going to keep Gonzaga around for a minute. But I think UConn does enough to get past them, and they make the Final Four. And that was and every single bracket I had UConn coming out of this one. I really had UConn coming out of this one. I was very confident in UConn coming out of this region, and I thought they were going to do their thing out of the West. They had a very favorable path, a more favorable path than predicted. I thought they were going to get there by defeating Kansas and then defeating Gonzaga. But instead, they have to beat Arkansas and then Gonzaga. And I think they very well can do that. And then we've shipped to the other sides of this bracket now. The games are going to be played tonight in the Sweet 16. So let's move backwards first. Let's refresh your mind of what we have going on here. What happened? You have Alabama beating Texas A&M Corpus Christi. And their best player, Brandon Miller, not scoring a single point, scoring 0 points, struggling so far in the tournament. Then you had Maryland, West Virginia, a game where I really liked West Virginia and pressed Virginia to move on. Unfortunately, they lose and fall to the hands of Maryland in the last second. Maryland, a massive comeback in that one, if you remember. West Virginia kind of in control, jumped out to an early lead, and Maryland came from behind and was able to get the win. Shows you the madness of March in itself. Virginia was trying to throw it full court in a sense, just getting rid of it, trying to burn the last few seconds. A guy for Furman catches it right behind half court, takes a step, strong chest pass to the wing, pull up 3, game over. And you can see some footage in the locker room of that one where it's just like the Furman players, like, he just threw it. Like, they couldn't believe he did that. Of like how like a bonehead play, just bringing it back, You've all been told, like, oh, what a stupid play, what a bonehead play that was, what a silly mistake. That's what it was, He just kind of panicked in the moment, a team like Virginia, and just threw it. And I really liked Furman to win that one coming in. Virginia is very much a system team, not much of a star player team. That's why I thought Furman was going to do it. Furman coming in this game had strong guard play and experience, and I really thought they were going to do it. And then we had Creighton taking on NC State. Creighton moves on, defeats NC State. NC State, a team, in my opinion, who really didn't belong in the tournament in the first place, but somehow landed themselves as 11 seed, loses to Creighton. And then Baylor, UC Santa Barbara. Baylor moves on. Missouri, Utah, a game that a lot of people predicted to be the most entertaining on paper. Missouri moves on. Then you have Princeton, Arizona, the first true big upset of the tournament, I would say, in Princeton, moving on, defeating Arizona. And then after that, the matchups in the round of 32, Bama moves on to Maryland. San Diego State defeated Furman. Creighton defeated Baylor. And Princeton defeated Missouri. Princeton not only defeated Missouri, but beat them by 15 points. Coming into this region, my predictions for my Elite Eight in this region, it was Alabama, Creighton. I've said on multiple programs on the show here on the YouTube channel, and then on Chase's channel as well, that Arizona was my least favorite 2 seed. I was very unconfident in them. Did not trust them one bit. I thought they were going to lose to Missouri or Utah State. I thought the game versus Princeton would be a wake-up call for them, and then they'd end up getting bounced in the second round. But instead, Princeton gets the job done, and then Princeton defeats Missouri. And then in the Sweet 16, you have Alabama, San Diego State, Creighton versus Princeton. I think Alabama, the San Diego State game tonight will be very entertaining. I think this one will be a fun one to watch. I think Alabama does enough to get by. Brandon Miller maybe wakes up in this tournament a bit more, starts getting going. Apparently has a groin injury going around, allegedly. But I think some people have also said, like, hey, maybe it's just a cover for all the drama that's been happening this year so he doesn't have to go to the podium and talk about it. And that very well might be the case. Alabama moves on versus San Diego State. Then you have Creighton taking on Princeton. Creighton versus Princeton. Creighton, a team that I really thought was going to make the Elite Eight. My favorite to get to the Elite Eight. I thought they were going to get there more often than not. And then if I thought they were playing against a team that was not Alabama, I really think Creighton could make the Final Four if it wasn't versus Alabama. But instead, they will face Alabama. I think they lose to Alabama. Alabama not only has Brandon Miller, but they have two of everything. They have a great guard play. They have good bigs. They can score from anywhere, and they got bench play as well if in case they get into any foul trouble. So coming out of the South region, I really like Alabama. Then we move over to the Midwest region. The Midwest region, your 1 seed there was Houston. Your 2 seed out there was Texas. And after that, some of the more fun matchups we got to see. Iowa taking on Auburn. We saw Auburn move on there. Miami, Drake. And then they played Indiana, the IU Hoosiers. And Miami defeated Indiana. And then Pitt versus Xavier. Pitt beat Iowa State in the first round. And this is a Pitt team I got to watch in person at the first four. This Pitt team plays with 4 guards essentially and 2 big Spanish 7-footers. 2 Spain guys. They're freshmen, twin brothers. They're like 7'1", 7'2", if I recall. And they look like guards the way they play. Like, I'm just guessing here, shot in the dark, that these guys were late growth bigs. They looked like they were like point guards, like very confident on the ball. They moved, dribbled well, loved to shoot the three, did not enjoy playing and down low. So I think there were some guys that maybe had a couple late growth spurts. That's my guess. And that Pitt team played really well. But my concern for them was rebounding the ball. They had to rebound the ball better. They were out-rebounded by Mississippi State in the first 4. And that was my biggest concern. But Pitt gets it done, and they play against this Iowa State team. And this Iowa State team, let me tell you, they just were asleep early on, it felt like, versus Pitt. Final score in that one ended up coming out to be 59-41. But if you remember, Pitt jumped out to a massive lead early. And that's why I think they did so well. They just jumped out to a massive lead early, got a cushion, then they hit the glass pretty well on the defensive side of things. And then you have Pitt and Xavier taking on, and I really like Xavier a lot. I really like Xavier to defeat Pitt, and they ended up doing that 84-73. And then we have Texas defeating Colgate, and Penn State upsetting Texas A&M. Not as much of an upset as you think. I think it's Jalen Pickett or Jaden Pickett, one of the two. A really great guard for Penn State. I really liked him defeat Texas A&M. Texas A&M, a team that went to the SEC tournament finals, and just a team that felt kind of peaked too early, hit their ceiling. Just something about teams like that when they hit their ceiling that worries you, and that's how I felt about Texas A&M. If they had maybe a better seed, they could have done something maybe, but I really like this Penn State team who was really catching fire towards the end of the season, making a little bit of a run there in the Big Ten tournament, and also doing well in their final regular season stretch in the Big Ten. Now in the Sweet 16, the matchups in the Midwest, Houston versus Miami, Xavier versus Texas. Now this is as chalk as it has gotten more or less out of any region. Houston and Marcus Sasser take on Miami, and Texas versus Xavier. Sean Miller, the head coach of Xavier. I don't know. This is where it gets interesting. There's moments where this Houston team looks amazing. There's also moments where this Houston team looks really, really bad. Really bad. Very streaky. Very, very streaky. I think streaky is a fair word to say here. They just worry me quite a bit. So my gut reaction says Houston wins versus Miami. I think they win versus Miami. Now we look at Xavier in Texas. A Texas team that's played really well this season. Dealt with a lot of adversity, though. Lots and lots of adversity, lots and lots of drama. Their head coach, alleged domestic assault, alleged charges dropped. Not sure what that situation looks like, but new head coach, interim head coach at the moment is taking over. And this Texas team, I just don't know how to feel because they've played with a lot, They've played with a lot and they've dealt with a lot. That's part of the reason why I really think Xavier is going to move on. I think Xavier will defeat Texas, and I think we have Houston versus Xavier, Big East versus the American Athletic Conference in the Elite Eight. And if Marcus Sasser stays healthy, I think Houston will go to the Final Four. The Final Four in Houston, the Houston Texans Stadium, I think. Final Four in Houston. Houston makes it to the Final Four. I think that's a very good place for them. So my Final Four picks are Alabama, Houston, Kansas State, and UConn. You would have Kansas State taking on Alabama, UConn taking on Houston. And then after that, I like Alabama and UConn. I think Alabama or UConn will win the national championship this year. We're going to go to a quick break. I'll give you guys my national championship preview at the end of the show, my national champion pick. But when we get back from the break, we're going to be talking about the games tonight, kind of what that matchup looks like, where the points are, what's the spread, all that good stuff. I'm not betting on these games, just giving you advice. And then we're going to move on, talk about the national championship preview, Final Four preview, and we're going to get on out of here. So take this few minutes here. We're going to put on some tunes, enjoy the break, and we'll be back here in a moment. It's Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith on WeSide 91.5 FM. Stay with us through the break. Appreciate you guys. talking about a lot of the March Madness kind of recap. That's what we've been talking about here for the first half, the recap of March Madness, talking about the first round, first round of 32, and the Sweet 16 games of yesterday, kind of painting the picture of what's going on. Tonight, Sweet 16 day 2, and we got some great games going on. We're going to be breaking those down here in a second. Then after that, going to go for Elite 8, the Final 4, and then my national champion pick. And then once we do that, we're going to get on out of here. So we got about 25-ish minutes or so to about the 5 o'clock hour. We're probably getting you out by then. So breaking down the games for tonight. First game on the slate tonight, San Diego State versus Alabama. Alabama versus San Diego State. So the spread, 6.5 points. Alabama's favored by 6.5. I really like Alabama in this one. They have a great team, great ball club, a lot of depth, a lot of drama, though. A lot of drama. San Diego State, more like a Michigan State team, very well balanced. In this one, I really like Alabama to win. I really think Alabama's going to win. I think it's going to be a tight game through and through. If I had to give some points here, I'd say San Diego State would cover the points, but Alabama gets the win. And I think that's the best play here. San Diego State keeping it close, Alabama to get the win. If you want to look at some alternate spreads out there, I know a bunch of guys love to bet. Not even a bunch of guys. A bunch of people love to bet, using guys as an everybody term here. But I think a lot of people love to bet on basketball games. So my advice to you would be San Diego State points, 6.5, or maybe even get a more alternate spread. Maybe find something about 10 to 13, not ruin your money, but give you some extra more wiggle room, I think. I think this game, San Diego State, I'd almost lock it. They lose no more than 10 points. So you can find a spread about 10 points, 11 points. I would do that one as well. So I think San Diego State, if you want to be safe, that's what you do. But I think 6.5 is a fair play, a fair roll of the dice, But I would more prefer a 10. Right now, 6.5 is plus 100. So you don't want to ruin your money, but I think it's a fair shot. But I think Alabama wins that one at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then you have Miami and taking on Houston. 5 seed Miami versus number 1 seed Houston. My apologies. Miami is plus 7.5. Houston's favored to win, minus 350. This one, and Miami, is plus 275. Didn't mention that. Here, if I were you, I really like Miami to cover their 7.5, and I think Houston wins. I think that one goes pretty chalk. So if you go San Diego State points, Bama money, you go Miami points, Houston money, that's put you a really good set right there. You're already cooking with something very nice, very likely. And even if you go to the alternate points as well, I think you have a lot of success there. And then we look at Princeton and Creighton. Now, this game I think is going to be it's going to be fun to watch because of the story of Princeton. But I think Creighton dominates this one end to end. I really like Creighton to win. I really think Creighton can win this one by 15 to 20 points. Would I play 15 to 20 points? No, thank you. I would not be putting 15 to 20 points, in college basketball. It's tough. Likely, but it's tough. So if I were you, I would cover with Princeton maybe at 15 or 20 in an alternate line. But I think Creighton will win by anywhere between 15 to 10 points tonight, realistically. More likely than not. So I think, Creighton wins. I would avoid the points. The points is where it gets dicey in this one. Princeton can very well heat up and keep it close, or they very well can get blown out. It's not like these other games where it's predictable and they'll stick around. If you don't recall, Creighton is one of my teams that I thought could win the national title coming in before Selection Sunday, just looking at the teams who should be in the tournament. Creighton was a team preseason top 10, really good on the Ken Palm offense and defensive analytics, one of the best teams in the country analytically. And a lot of you guys, a lot of people in the modern era, like, screw analytics. I don't like analytics because it just doesn't do the whole story justice. I really like the analytics side of things in basketball to a sense. In some sports, analytics help you paint a picture. That's my biggest saying around analytics. And I think this paints a good picture for Creighton because they passed the eye test. They were supposed to be really good this year. They look good, and also the computer and the stats say they play good. So that's why I like Creighton a lot in this tournament. I thought they could make a Final Four national title run. I think they end in the final 8 teams in the Elite 8. If they get lucky, they get past Alabama. But I think they're going to fall to the hands of Alabama. So I like Creighton to win. And then the last couple of games we got, the last game of the night, my apologies, is Xavier versus Texas. Xavier versus Texas. Now, this one is going to be a fun one to watch. You have Xavier as plus a 150 to win, Texas minus 182. So Texas is favored, but this game is looking very much pick 'em. Very similar numbers to Gonzaga UCLA last night. I personally really like Xavier to win. I think Xavier very well can win this. If you want to be more conservative on the betting side, I would play Xavier points because I think they do keep it close. But Texas could win this game. I'm not saying it's a lock. This is the game I feel the most uneasy about of any game tonight, So I would go with Xavier to win personally, but this game is one that I feel the most uneasy about. That being just because we have two good teams here. Two very good teams, two very well-matched teams. Xavier got thumped in the Big East championship game versus Marquette, and Texas is a team that has went through a lot this year. So it's kind of just, you don't know what to do here. And I would avoid this one. This game is going to be fun to watch. It'll be a great nightcap at 9:45 p.m. Eastern time. But right now, I would just roll, personally, picking-wise, San Diego State points covering, Alabama to win, Houston to win, Miami covering some points there. And then you have Creighton to win as well. And I would stay away from this Xavier and Texas ball game, personally. So now we'll go in my predictions for the Elite Eight teams that make it to the Elite Eight and some Sweet 16 games tonight. So Sweet 16 tonight. I think we're going to have the matchups. Yeah, we got the match set already. So talked about them a lot earlier. Excuse me, as I'm fiddling with my notes here and getting ready. So Alabama defeats San Diego State. Creighton defeats Princeton. And then Alabama goes to the Final Four. Houston versus Miami, Florida. I think Marcus Sasser and Houston play well. This one's more of a scarier game for them, but I think Houston wins. Then you have Xavier taking on Texas. I think Xavier gets past Texas, but whoever wins this game will fall to the hands of Houston. Earlier, if you asked me the first week of March, I would have been leaning towards Xavier or Texas to make the Final Four. But Houston's kind of got their confidence back. They're starting to play well again, and they have Marcus Sasser, and that was a big injury concern earlier on this month. So I think Houston goes to the Final Four in Houston. And then on the flip side of the bracket, so that your South winner is Alabama, your Midwest winner is Houston, and I think your East winner will be Kansas State defeating Florida Atlantic University. Then out of the West, you have UConn and Gonzaga. That game is going to be the most interesting one to watch. I would bet the over on that game in a heartbeat. Gonzaga is the best offense. UConn has a great offense, but Gonzaga is the best offense. And I think that game is going to be a shootout. But I think UConn and their two bigs get it done. I think they do enough holding Drew Timme relatively quiet. Drew Timme's going to go off of Gonzaga. Drew Timme, an experienced player for Gonzaga, felt like he's been around forever. I think he will definitely do enough in that game to have an incredible stat line. But I'm going to lean towards UConn getting the victory in that game. So then that means UConn faces off against Houston. And I like Houston to lose. I think UConn wins. And then Kansas State, Alabama. Kansas State will play Alabama. And I like Alabama to defeat Kansas State. So the national title game comes down to Alabama and UConn. And I think the best player in the country, Brandon Miller, who's probably going to be the number one pick if it's not Victor Wembanyama, but I think it's kind of a lock that's Victor Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama, if you don't know, big 7'5", 7'4" center who's currently playing overseas for Went College to go play pro. And I think he'll be the number one pick, but I think Brandon Miller is going to be the number 2 pick in the NBA draft. So my national champion is going to be Alabama, and I know it's kind of a chalk pick, but it's not what I'm confident in, I will say that. If Brandon Miller was playing much better this entire season, I would feel a lot more confident in Brandon Miller being, if he's dropping 25 or 30 a night, but he hasn't been. So I think we're going to go Brandon Miller and Alabama to the title game, and I think UConn could do it. That game's more of a coin toss than a lot of people would say, and I really like Alabama to win that game, though. I think Brandon Miller wakes up when the time is right, and I think he's going to carry Alabama to a national title game. But overall, this March has been an incredible tournament, one that's unpredictable. I'm sorry for you Indiana basketball fans out there listening to this program right now, because it's been a rough month for you guys. More if you're a Purdue fan than an IU fan. IU, you had a good season. Trace Jackson Davis, Jalen Hood, those guys played very well. You had a good squad. But I think Purdue, seeing Zach Edey and the Boilermakers collapse to FDU Knights, that's probably the worst loss in all of college basketball history. And thankfully, because of you guys, I was able to be there and watch it. So I really want to say thank you for that. I was able to go as an accredited media member for all this stuff through the station. So thank you guys for all your support out there as well. But I think that's going to wrap up our show today. We're going to end up with that. I think Alabama will win the national title over UConn. That's my prediction for right now. But obviously, we'll be on the air next week, hopefully talking about these games. Maybe we'll bring a couple more guests and things like that. But it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you guys. Make sure, if you're driving right now, take a moment when you get home, where you get to your final destination, wherever that might be. Or if you're home right now, go hop on your computer, pull out your phone, get on the YouTube app, look up Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith. You can type it all in. It can even be all one word. It still works. Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith. That was my YouTube channel. I think it's a great place for you guys to subscribe, get some extra content. That's where I post a lot more videos, a lot more collabs, some other people who can't make it down to the station. And that's where you're going to hear me pick that I thought number 16 seeded FDU Knights were going to defeat the number 1 Purdue Boilermakers. And then from there, you can hit up all the other socials, follow if you're a big Twitter guy, Instagram, TikTok, whatever that might be. Feel free to follow me there. Twitter's going to be KIR, the acronym Keeping It Real, and then a W, Tyler Smith. Nice and easy, nice and simple. And then on TikTok, if you really want to find me there, I'm actually kind of blowing up on the TikTok and the YouTube for a little bit here for the last couple of weeks. Average about 15,000 to 20,000 views over those days. And the TikTok is going to be the same. It's KIRW, Tyler Smith. Odds are you can find me on any social media platform out there with Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith or KIRW, Tyler Smith. But once again, it is Weeside 91.5 FM, Richmond's public radio, listener-supported public radio, and I can't emphasize that enough. Listener-supported. You guys support me very well. I love hopping on this microphone, talking with you all, no matter wherever it is. If it's Weeside 915 or if you catch me on other platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, social medias, anything like that. I really appreciate everything you guys do. I hope you have a great rest of your Friday, March 24th. Try and stay dry out there this weekend. It's going to be a chilly one. And also, if you're around the Richmond area and you like Earlham College baseball, Earlham College baseball has a doubleheader on Sunday. First game Saturday, though, 4 p.m. And then 2 games on Sunday, going to be a 12 o'clock start and then a 3 o'clock start tentatively. And I'll be the voice for both of those games as well. But as always, it's Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith on Weeside 91.5 FM. Thank you for all you guys do. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Friday, March 24th. Some great basketball on tonight and some great baseball being played here in Richmond, Indiana versus Manchester College. It's been a pleasure as always. Take care, and thank you for listening to Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith.